Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 29 of Kids Are Thinking with Dr. Don. Tonight, kids are talking about college application stress. It's a stressful time for everybody. We've partnered with Fairfield Cares. They brought us some kids. We've got some returning panelists from one of our previous shows, and we've got a great show today. So please leave your comments in the box, and we'll try to bring them into the show to talk with the panels about it. And tonight's show is also sponsored by Pet Vet Care Centers. So visit them at petvetcarecenters.com and grab a vet in your area. So we'll see you soon.
I want to hear everyone's different perspectives and let everyone know that they're not alone.
It gives me hope for a lot of people because I know there's people that really struggle with
do things that you want to do to influence the world in the way you want.
Go out of your way to educate yourself by watching the show.
Everybody's always going to be struggling with mental health, yet nobody will know about it.
Kids Are Talking has given me an outlet to share my opinion and talk to people from all over the world. Dr. Don? Can y'all hear me?
I think we hear loud and clear, don't we, Mike?
That's the best way to listen. I mean, that's why we have the kids on the show tonight, to listen to what they have to say loud and clear.
So timing is everything. We picked a topic tonight that is on every senior in America's mind, juniors as well, and probably even the way we're going, sophomores, freshmen, and eighth graders. I mean, college. What does it mean to go to college now in 2022? We've just gone through a pandemic. We're still in it. We don't know where we're going with the pandemic. Kids' college experiences have been altered in the last couple of years because of it. Mm-hmm. And now we have the biggest war in Europe, in certainly in our lifetime and beyond. And I was just thinking of the Vietnam time when I was in college, and imagine that it's got to be on these kids' minds tonight in terms of what it's going to be like for them going into college in the fall of 2022. So there's a lot of stress just without all that. So we're going to find out tonight.
And also applying to colleges. I know, it was hard this year and last year. Kids that wanted to apply to colleges, they couldn't always go see them.
That's right.
You couldn't see them. You had to wait, just apply or see a few. So I'm sure that added to the stress, not being able to always be there physically before you commit.
Yeah, these are memorable times. College has always been stressful. Applying, I've heard it's even harder now than ever to get into college. But in a time of uncertainty and interruption, disruption, it makes it even more of a profound and meaningful subject tonight. So I'm ready to go and
all right.
Let's get into it.
Let's bring out the panel.
Let's meet the panel.
We've got some kids from all over Connecticut here with us today.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, I want to say hello to everybody. We're going to start. We've never had this before. We got three of you in the same place tonight. That's a little different.
Yeah, that works.
A little cozier. And you're in a library right now, the three of you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to start with you, Colin. We always just have everybody just say hi. And so, Colin, I welcome you. Of course, Livy, I welcome you, and Mia and Ryan. But we're going to start with you, Colin, and just ask you about what was it that brought you to this show tonight? I know you're obviously a senior, right? You're going to college.
Yep.
What made this show something that you wanted to talk about tonight?
Thank you so much for having me here. As you said, my name is Colin. I'm a senior at Fairfield Ward High School in Fairfield, Connecticut. One of the big reasons, or one of the big motivators for me to join an organization like this, and especially focus on things like stress, anxiety in the college world, is unfortunately I lost one of my good buddies to suicide last year. And so since then, I've just kind of wanted to get myself more involved with mental health, and obviously stress being a huge part of that. There's nothing more stressful than I can think of, at least in the past year, that we've had to go through, besides obviously COVID and the pandemic, than applying to colleges. Like you guys said, not being able to see all these schools when you want to, not knowing what it's going to look like. So just figured it'd be nice to come out here and do my part to try and, help people out, answer any questions, stuff like that.
Well, Colin, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
So maybe because I don't think people understand your organization that you're working for, but it's obviously it's related to mental health, and obviously you've experienced the suicide of a very good friend. So maybe just a brief description of like what brought you to this organization, because obviously there's an interest in the mental health aspects of everything. And now tonight we're going to talk about the stress of going into college. What is it? What do you do in your organization?
If you want to know more about the actual organization, the person sitting to my left would probably be the best to ask. She's been here the longest.
Okay, so then we'll do that. We'll pass it. You did a good job. America just met you.
Pass the mic.
And pass the mic. Okay, Livy, he set you up. So let's hear what brings you here tonight, and maybe you can answer that question and tie it into why you're here tonight with us.
Okay. Hi, I'm Livy, and I run the Fairfield Cares Youth Committee along with my boss, Kathy. And what we do is we work with the community, like we work with all ages. I've done stuff with elementary schoolers, we've done a lot with middle schoolers, and we work to prevent underage drinking and substance misuse. And we try and help like kids learn healthy coping mechanisms before they like go off to college. And we also do a lot with mental health. And some examples of stuff that we've done is we've done like mental health and coping mechanisms fair where we had stuff out where like they could learn about like the scientific background of like why going for runs is a good coping mechanism, and like there was a station on like using like different scents to help you cope. So do things like that.
Hmm. So are you working with a lot of kids who are stressed out about going to college? Is that part of what you do? You have kids who call in or meet with you? How does that work?
So our group meets, I think, like every other week, and we like brainstorm ideas, and then we like pick out different issues that we have in the community or like within our high schools.
And what are some of the
As Livy was saying, one of the biggest things with the mental health thing is we're trying to tackle it's the stigma behind it. So we've been brainstorming ways to kind of get information and get help out there to people that may not necessarily have the courage at that point to ask or aren't feeling comfortable to ask. So one of Livy's good ideas was to print out informational posters and cards like that and put them in anonymous locations like the bathroom, so people who may, like I said, may not feel comfortable reaching out for help at that point can get help anonymously if they need it. So it's more something like that.
Are you getting a big response, particularly with what's going on right now and what we've all been going through, and with kids going to college? Are you getting a lot of responses of a feel of what's going on with kids out there right now?
I'd say we've gotten a decent amount. Actually, when like going back to the mental health fair that I was talking about before, I had emailed my principal from my elementary school and asking like for them to put it on the announcements that way the kids would come. And I got a lot of positive feedback from like my old teachers. And like one in particular that stood out to me, like my favorite teacher from 4th grade emailed me like saying that his kids like were excited and like they all were like planning like carpools like in class, which is really fun to hear.
That's really great. So, Colin, I just to ask you, what college where are you going next year?
I actually don't know yet. Fordham is one of my top choices that I got into, and so I'm waiting to hear back from American and a couple other schools before I make my decision.
And Livy, how about you? Because I know everybody's going to want to ask this question, so we might as well get it done. So you tell us where you want to go. Are you going? Do you know yet?
So I'm not sure where I'm going yet. I've heard back from 3 out of like the 11 that I've applied to so far. I've heard back from Loyola Chicago, UDEL, and Salve in Miami, Ohio. Oh, so it's actually 4.
I didn't even hear that last one. What was that last one, Livy? Did you freeze on me?
Miami, Ohio.
Miami of Ohio. A lot of people I know that are looking into Miami of Ohio. It's become a popular school. Yeah. And okay, meet Mia.
Yeah, so I don't know where I'm going yet either, but I've gotten into 2 schools so far. So I've gotten into Fordham and Richmond, and I'm really happy with them, but I have like 10 more schools to hear back from. So it's going to be a long process for me. But as for a little introduction, I'm Mia, and I'm a senior at Fairfield High School. And I joined Fairfield Cares because I felt it was really important to really keep the conversation going with mental health. And especially at this time period with COVID, a lot of kids are really going through it. And it's a really new experience that obviously none of us have dealt with before. So I just felt it would be a good opportunity to really like outreach with the community and try to help others.
That's terrific. How many kids are working in this organization right now?
I think we have like 11 high schoolers in our like smaller like subgroup of like the Fairfield Cares Youth Committee, and then it's part of like a bigger organization where we have like branches of like people who work in like psychology, and then we have like teachers who are part of like our education system. Like I think, does Kathy work in both Ward and Ludlow or just Ludlow?
I think she works in both.
Yeah, and then we have people who are like parts of our high school, so we have like branches everywhere.
That's pretty terrific. Well, we're so glad that you're doing this and you're being part of the show tonight. So thank you. And then there's Ryan. Ryan, you're listening to these three amazing kids and what they're doing. And welcome back. We've had you on what show did we have you on? Guns and Violence, I think. So welcome back and tell us tonight what this is about for you.
Ryan, I heard you applied to a large number of schools.
Oh my God, Ryan, how many schools? I mean, I'm already overwhelmed with 10, 12 schools being. I mean, how many schools, Ryan?
I applied to like 20 some, I think. It was really overwhelming.
Oh my God.
Anyways, I'm Ryan. I'm a senior at Weston High School in Connecticut.
And Ryan, do you know where you're going?
I have no idea. I still have to hear back.
Is there any particular place you want to go, or are you just open to you apply to so many schools? I guess you're covering a lot of bases, right?
Covering a lot of bases, but I think like a top choice of mine would be like UCLA. But
so do they still have these? My understanding, they have group applications now. You don't have to apply to 20 different schools, right? Am I right? There's like 20. I mean, you have group applications that condense
the common app. Yeah, they call it the common app.
All right. So now that I've met you all, what is it that I think people are curious about this? Like, what is it that you are all looking for when you go to college? I mean, what is the thing that makes you decide where you want to go? Who wants to join? Colin, we start with you. Where do you put your focus on deciding where you want to go to school?
That's a great question. I think it's different for everybody, but I think the biggest thing is being able to see yourself there, and then not only in the physical dorm, but more just, do you see yourself being able to like be yourself at that certain spot? You know, if you enjoy sport, if you enjoy an activity, depending on what your major is going to be, it's going to, you know, for me, it's really about like, do I see myself being happy in more than just one different facet of life, like at a certain school? I think that's. I hope that's not too general.
No, it's fine. I want everybody to take a crack at this question. Is there? I mean, you know that old saying, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Do you have any sense of a particular area of study that you want to focus in on yet? Do you even know something like that at this point?
Definitely thinking about political science, legal studies, government, something in that field.
Certainly need that right now. Livy, how about you?
So for me, what was really helpful is visiting the schools in person. And I know that like we were at a disadvantage for that our year, but what I found really helpful is I started from a very young age, like looking at schools periodically, like on road trips, even like seventh grade, because I had older siblings as well.
Livy. Wait. In seventh grade, you started to look at colleges?
Oh, I gotta explain. So I have older siblings, and whenever they went, my parents encouraged me to go as well, because they said odds are we aren't gonna have like time to visit this area again, so you might as well like get a feel for it. So by doing that, like whenever my family was like going on vacation, it was really helpful for me to like get a sense of like what a small school looks like, what a big school looks like. And I obviously wasn't paying too much attention because I was still in middle school, but I paid enough to like retain what a small school versus like a middle size or like big size school looks like.
So do you have a desire to go to a smaller school or a bigger school as a result of what you just said, or not?
Honestly, I've kind of liked a mix. So I went back and forth between wanting like a small school or a bigger school. So what I did is I made sure to apply to like a variety. So then when I decide like what I want, if I want like a bigger school, I'll have options for both.
You're covering your bases, huh? Do you have a can you talk about supplemental essays? Yeah, we'll get to that question. Let me finish this, but question on the table is about supplemental essays, but I'll ask you about that because that is a great question. Is there a particular school that you, not school, a particular thing you want to study when you go to college or not? Do you know yet?
Yeah, so I'm planning on going into elementary education. So something that was really helpful is like emailing all of the like schools that I thought about like that I might be interested in and like seeing how that program works. So I feel like if you're like looking for like a reason to like apply to a certain school, reaching out and like finding out details about the program that you want to go into is like really helpful.
And Mia, how about you?
So unlike Livy, I am the oldest in my family, so I didn't really get the opportunity to see colleges until about last year. So it was kind of a lot for me to take in. And for me, a lot of it was seeing the schools in person because there were many schools that I would see online and do all the tours for, and I would fall in love with them, and then I would see them in person. And for the schools that had students there, some of those I would go to and I would see students walking around. I would get there and I feel like I wouldn't fit in there and it just didn't feel right. But I think for me, something that really matters is location. And it's interesting because schools have a really big variety. So I have some that are in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. I have some that are like near cities. That's what I did as well. Like I have a big variety of them because I also know that when it comes to make the decision, I want to have a lot of things that I can look at, a lot of factors. I don't want to like narrow myself in. But
Yeah, so
I
Livy,
definitely want to be near a city. I want to look into like political science and legal studies. So I feel like being near a city and having those resources would be really beneficial.
so Livy and Colin, you were laughing. Was there something, let us in on the joke or not? Was there something funny that was going on?
The comment section.
Oh, you mean there's some comments in the chat room?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't see them. So anything in particular
Yeah.
that made you laugh that we should, what was it? I'm just curious.
I don't think we're gonna read
Yeah, I'm
them.
not gonna repeat them.
I think I'll just leave you in
All right, don't even
suspense.
bother. Don't even bother because the chat room, you know, we're always trying to make the chat room relevant. So obviously, we'll just let that one go. Ryan, how about you? Tell us what you're looking for, you know, and where your focus is. Any particular things you look for or you want to study or do when you go away to college?
Similar to what's already been brought up, I'd kind of like to be in a major city, preferably. I'd like to study biology in college, pursuing the pre-med track, perhaps.
Oh, is it hard? It was hard
And
because go on. Go ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
I try to look for schools that had a strong biology program for the most part.
So I've heard people say they get on a campus and they just feel that's the school I want to go to. Has anybody had that moment where you just get on that campus and you say, "Man, like that's it for me. I just know I'm on that quad, I'm walking around and that's the school." Have any of you had that aha moment? Because I've heard that people have those. Doesn't sound like any of you have had that yet, am I right? Nobody's had that aha moment. Ryan, you have?
When I visited Emory and NYU, I really, really liked it, and I could really envision myself being there. Really like the environment.
So let's talk about the application process because we already had a thing about the supplemental essays.
Yeah, there was a couple of questions about the most stressful. Here's a good one that came in.
Yeah.
What's the most stressful part of the process? Selecting
Right.
the schools, waiting to hear.
Yeah, I'd like to know that too in terms of writing. I mean, obviously the essays are important. I hear the interview is important. But like, what matters now? Is it the essays? Is it the interview? And also, I want to ask about SATs as well. So let's just start as what is the most stressful part of the application process? Anybody want to answer that question?
Oh, they switched and they said their camera was down.
What happened?
Can you guys hear us?
Can you hear me?
We can
you guys
hear you
me?
now, yeah, but we can't see you.
Did you hear what I just? Did you hear my question? By the way.
Yeah, I heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody have an answer to what's the most stressful part of the application process?
That one. I'm gonna have to say deadlines because personally for me, I tell myself if I have a deadline, say that it's Monday and I have a deadline on Friday, I tell myself I'm gonna do a little bit on Monday, a little bit on Tuesday, a little bit on Wednesday, a little bit on Thursday, and then have it done by Friday. But instead, I normally start it Thursday, maybe for 10 minutes, and then do it all Friday. That's something that you just can't do for college. And I learned that the hard way with my first application deadline where I tried to cram it in and it wasn't my best work. You really have to make an effort to like plan out your time, like schedule it you need to not think about like going out with your friends and stuff when you have these deadlines, because you're going to be there for the next 4 years. I mean, unless you transfer, but like you're probably going to be there for the next 4 years. So it's something that you really need to prioritize.
How about how about anybody else want? Have we lost? I don't see you. Did we lose them?
Yeah, we
Mike?
lost their video.
We're doing a radio show on part of the guests.
We got Ryan's video.
We got
though.
Ryan. Ryan, you're the visual right now. We're doing the radio show on the left side of the screen right now. But that's how we started 23 years ago. So, what you want to add to the stresses of what goes on with getting into college and what you have to like? What are the things that you feel kids feel the most stressed about?
I'd say the thing that kids feel the most stressed about are probably the deadlines, as previously mentioned, because you have to complete all these essays by a certain date. And one strategy I've used to complete these essays on time are reusing like certain prompts, because many of the prompts are very similar for different schools, and editing them slightly. With another part of the process that's really stressful, I'd say, are interviews. During the interviews, like everything that you say could be like used against you or for you, right? And these alumni interviewers hold a lot of power in being able to write a really favorable or negative note on your application.
You know, I always felt a good interview was interviewing the person that's interviewing you. Do you find that? I've done a lot of interviewing. I've been interviewed, and I'm curious that now that you brought up the interview process, I know a lot of people would say that when you're being interviewed, it's good to ask the interviewer a lot of questions. Do you think there's truth to that? And that's up for all of you to answer, because it's a stressful moment when somebody's interviewing you. I'm just curious as to what you think about that.
I think for the interviews, it's Mia speaking. Sorry, you guys can't see us. But for the interviews, I definitely think it's really, really important that you interact with the person and also ask them questions, because at the end of the day, it should be an experience where not only are they gaining information about you, you want to know more about the school and have the harder questions answered, because at the end of the day, if you are applying regular decision as the majority of your applications, it's going to come down to what school you feel is the best fit, and you might enter an interview really liking a school and getting some of your questions answered and being maybe more unsure or maybe more sure about the decision. So it's really important to use the interview for your own benefit too.
So now that we're on the radio with the three of you, is that Mia talking?
Yeah, that was Mia.
It's pretty good, Mia. At least I now already recognize your voice, so that's good. So I was thinking, like, so what about the essays? I mean, the essays are profound. I mean, you have to try to write something that is really soulful and meaningful about what's going on. Was that a meaningful experience to write your supplemental essays? What did that do for you emotionally to write about? I mean, I know some of the questions I've seen have been pretty interesting questions. They make you really delve into yourself. What kind of experiences have you had in terms of writing your essays?
Personally, I feel like it's been pretty meaningful. Like for me, it required a lot of like reflection, and I feel like it was beneficial for me because I was like seeing a lot of prompts that were like similar but worded a little bit differently. So it really was just almost like a draft and then like another revision, like for each question. Yeah. So it kind of was just looking at your work like over and over again. And by the end, I feel like it came out like really good.
So what about SATs now? I mean, are schools still looking at SAT scores? There's been a lot of racial questions about that in terms of they've been unfair. ACTs and SATs, are they now still a very important part of the process? Because when I went to college, it was really big. Thank God. You probably don't have that stress anymore, or is it still a stress?
I think it's definitely a stress with the SATs because almost all schools that I know of at least are test optional this year. So you have the option where you can send your scores in if you would like to, or if you feel they don't represent you as a learner, you don't have to send them in.
You don't? You do? I'm sorry. You do or you don't have to send them in?
You don't. You do not have to send your ACT or your SATs this year. They are optional, and it's only if you feel that they represent you as a learner. So
is that because of COVID, or are they continuing that moving forward?
Yeah, is it because of COVID or because they feel that the SATs now are really not fair because of
That's because of I think in the past 2 years it has been because of COVID, because it's been very difficult for a lot of students to get those scores because a lot of test sites have been closed down because of outbreaks. But I also think that in years leading up to COVID, there were a lot of schools that were shifting towards test optional because they felt that one test wasn't really a great representation of who you are as a student.
What made them change the thinking about SATs? I know there was a lot of issues that were racial issues around that. That some kids around the country didn't have the background and the fairness in their educational process to be able to compete with kids that were, in different environments. You all have a understanding or opinion about that, about why SATs have lost their status?
So for me personally, as someone with inattentive ADHD, I've found that for people like me, it puts me at such a big disadvantage because I'm somebody who I get time and a half, but to sit through that long of a test, like I can't sit through that, and it's hard for me to focus for that whole thing.
Right.
And there's so many people who are affected the same way that even like looking back at my scores, like I do so well for the first portion, and then by the end, I can't keep going. And it's the same thing with people with other learning disabilities. Like it just puts you at a disadvantage because there are so many people who are better at like project-based learning. And I'm someone who also, as one of my accommodations for my 504, a lot of my testing is done verbally because it's hard for me to like write sometimes.
Right.
Like even like holding a pencil, I have difficulties with that sometimes. And like so it makes it a lot easier.
So do you think do you lose an edge now? Is there a feeling you lose an edge if you don't send in your SAT scores?
Honestly, I don't think there was. Like I did it, I think I submitted it for all of mine except for like 3, and I got into 2 out of those 3, so I really didn't think it was that important.
No. How about anybody else have this, Ryan? Would anybody else want to talk about the SATs in terms of so am I hearing that basically it's an option for most schools now, whether you want to send it in or not, or some schools required and some don't require it at all? I'm trying to get a handle on that. Is there a clear answer on that question?
Yeah, so like all school. Oh, sorry, did I cut you off?
No, Ryan, all you.
All right. So some schools do require it. I think like one notable example is like Georgetown. They require all ACTs and SATs taken in the past, but some schools are also test blind rather than just being test optional, in which like they don't look at your test scores. Like one example would be the UC schools. All of the UC schools, due to like a court like ruling or something, are not allowed to look at the students' standardized test scores. And as someone who was traditionally a lot better at taking tests than in school with like projects and stuff, I feel like that hurts me, but I'm obviously biased. Right?
So where is this thing where who's not allowed to look at the test scores? Where you were referencing that? What's that about?
So so in the UC system, all the UC campuses have to be test blind, and they can't look at the test scores as a part of determining whether they're admitting a kid or not.
And the reason for that is because they feel it's biased?
They feel it's like unfair.
Unfair because of what we've already talked about or anything? Yeah. So here's another one I got for you all. I guess our radio show on the other side of the screen is still a radio show. So that was Livy. You were talking about the ADD, right? That was you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to need the 3 of you to talk a little bit louder because people can't see you at the moment. So what about what part is the competition and stress with other kids? Because here's another thing. You are obviously all terrific kids doing really great, meaningful things because you really feel them in your heart, that you really believe in wanting to do them. But then there are the kids, sometimes it's the parental influence and the competitive influence that are doing things because it looks good on your resume, it looks good on your college application, like how about kids? How do we, like, I guess colleges try to sniff that out a lot, right? Like how many kids are really, and probably comes out in the interview process, clearly you all are doing something that is really heartfelt But how about kids are just being told by mom and dad, oh, like you ought to do this program because it'll look good on your college application. How much of that is going on, do you think?
I think it's so obvious whether or not it's genuine when you're talking about something that's like your quote unquote passion. Like I had an interview with her talking about something for like almost the whole time, so something that we had in common. And I just don't think I'd be able to drive on that conversation. We were talking about her experience like tutoring at like a place of poverty and like how the kids were so nice there. And I do some work like in Wakeman at Bridgeport, and we were talking about like volunteering there and like helping kids with reading. And I think if I was just there just to be there for credit for college, that I wouldn't be able to share my experiences because I wouldn't care enough to like have enough thoughts about that.
I'll tell you, if I was working at a college, I'd be looking for a creative essay that was soulful, and I'd be looking at seeing what kind of things you're doing. And it sounds like you're doing a lot of really good things and really being very thoughtful about where you want to go to school. And God bless all of you in the sense that, I mean, during this time now, you had all these interruptions. Probably you couldn't even see schools for a while and all these kinds of things. I've been waiting for this question. You know, that whole thing that happened in Hollywood with those parents, that whole scandal about paying for, their kids to get into school. That was a horror show. Do you all have any opinions about that? I mean, I think that blew America's mind, that parents would actually, the pressure for their kids in college, and some of them went to jail. I'm just curious as to what you all think about that, the means or the ways that people would go about trying to get their kids into college and the pressure of parents. And what do you all think about that story? It was a big story in the news. I know it's a little old now, but I'm sure you all know about that one, right?
Yeah, we definitely know about that one.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it's really frustrating as a student, especially it wasn't our year of applications, so I feel like we were a little detached, but moving into this process now and being in this position where you're really putting down all the things you've done in the past 4 years and all the things you've accomplished, it's really frustrating to see how money can play a role in college applications, especially when it comes to like donating buildings or like things behind the scenes. It's really frustrating because you spend all this time like putting hard work into your passions and like what you really care about and figuring out what you want to do and what you're interested in, where you want to go, and you do all this hard work, and for that spot to be taken potentially by someone who is able to get to that school by money or by influence, it's really frustrating, and it's really difficult for students to see.
Anybody else? Yeah, anybody else on the panel want to respond to that one? Anybody else have any strong feelings about that question?
For me,
Right.
I felt bad
Livy?
for the kid in that situation because for parents to do that, it shows that the parent didn't believe that the kid could get in by themselves, and that just made me sad.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And Ryan?
I felt like it was really unfair because there were some kids who worked really hard for the spot, but just because they weren't rich and famous, didn't like go through underhanded means and become part of the water polo team. Right. They lost their spot to some famous person's daughter or son, right? That's completely not fair.
Colin, do you want to jump in on this or not? Is Colin even there? Colin is not. I wonder where Colin has been. Colin, you're not. I guess he's not with us at the moment. Sorry about that. How about scholarships? Like in terms of, we talked about people that have money, but even athletic scholarships. We've had affirmative action. We've had all kinds of. How do we balance and make the college application process fair so nobody feels that they're getting shortchanged? Is there a way we can improve that? Some kids get in because they're great athletes, and some people work really hard to be great students. And where are we going with that? That's tricky, isn't it? Anybody have any feeling about that? Oh my God! What?
We got them back.
We're back.
There you are! Oh my God! We missed you. This is like the ADD show, Mike. We lost. They lost us. On the ADD show, we were lost for about 20 minutes. We came back and they kept the show going. So we kept the show going, but we were doing pretty good radio work with the three of you. So now you know who you're listening to. So I was just saying, I was talking about affirmative action, scholarships. I mean, is there any way to keep it fair for all of you who are working so hard to get into college? Where do we draw the line between how we evaluate who gets the extra peak into getting into college? The athletes, the financials, the affirmative action. I mean, are we getting better at equaling the playing field and making it fair for everybody who's getting into college?
I mean, I feel like for me, I was working on something for a scholarship before this. I have a video to submit for something for a full ride for school. But the reason why I got it is something that I've worked so hard on. It's like something for leadership, cultural, and like the other and like community service. And I've had like I think over like this like throughout my high school years, I think that they can tell when you're doing something genuinely because like you want to rather than just for like on paper for it to look good. And I think that if they identify you as doing something because like you genuinely want to be doing it, then that's when you deserve like a scholarship.
So what about, you don't think the people are buying their way in, alumni, or if you have money, you think is there still a lot of shenanigans going on or not?
Oh, I think that there are people who are doing that, but just from my experience, I've seen that my hard work has paid off. But I would say that there are other people who are just can like buy their way in if they have money.
Yeah. Colin, have you been able to hear the show, or did we lose you altogether for a while?
No, I've been here the whole time. I
You want
just,
to jump in? You've been kind of silent. Did anything you want to jump in on?
I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. I do think that at least I hope, I like to think that colleges are seeing, like Libby said, really, really good hard work, a lot of passion, and they are rewarding that. I guess I can't speak from personal experience too much. I think that like a lot of the colleges I've talked to definitely do award money to people who have good grades, good test scores, and so I mean there definitely is some incentive based program. Like it would be foolish to say there isn't, but I mean I hope it's getting, you said, I really do hope that they're leveling the playing field, and that way your background, where you grew up, I think that it's getting better in the sense that stuff doesn't matter as much, and it's more the colleges are providing an opportunity for people to really showcase themselves and their talents, but I don't think we're completely there yet.
So there's a very good question in the chat room, by the way. How do we deal with rejection? The pressure and stress of getting into college, right? I mean, the impact on you're all into mental health, right? Oh, I see Livy wants to do this one. Yeah, I mean, the mental health stress. Yeah, there we go. Like, go ahead. How do we deal with the whole rejection issue?
I got rejected from my first school last week. I got rejected from Clemson, but I looked at it and then I was like, well, I didn't spend a minute on their website. I had no digital footprints there. I didn't know anything about the school other than one of my friends went there. So last minute I decided to apply. So for me, I was able to like take a step back and be like, they can tell that I'm not super interested in the school. And I have so many other people at my school who also applied who definitely have been like more interested. So I feel like part of it is like taking a step back and thinking like, did I even like care that much about this school? And another story is if it's like
did you said that you didn't have a digital footprint on the school. Are you saying that schools are tracking whether applicants are registered or logged into their social accounts and their websites and things, and they're using that as a basis for admittance?
I definitely do. I've heard that from like multiple people. Like I've heard that from like when you go on like if you go to like see a tour, they usually say that to sign up for their emails. They definitely do track that, and that was the only school that I didn't sign up for that. So I mean, I had it coming.
So you're saying social, Mike? I think social media piece. Is that what I'm hearing? It plays an important part in this whole thing? Is that what you were saying, Ryan? Is that what's going on here?
The digital, if you express digital interest, they're saying in whatever way.
So that makes a difference. So again, the personal rejection, the mental health issue around being rejected. Colin, you had something you want. Just the whole issue. Yeah, I mean, where the edges are. I mean, this digital. I mean, so what Livy was. Do you have a reaction to what Livy was just saying, or?
So I think that speaking towards like the mental health aspect of being rejected, I think it's really important to keep reminding yourself that. Well, I think, sorry to preface this, I think biggest, one of the bigger challenges and more difficult parts of getting rejected is, you feel like maybe you let down your parents. Maybe your parents got into this school and then they told you how great it was, and then you felt like, okay, maybe I want to go there. And then when you don't get in, you feel like maybe you let them down. And I think that's a really horrible feeling. I think a lot of us have felt that way, maybe from time to time. But the biggest thing that you need to remind yourself is it is so competitive, and it's when you don't get into a school, it's not because you're not good enough. It's just because of how many people they receive, and also popularity of these schools plays a role. So the biggest thing is just reminding yourself that you are smart, you are valid, you will succeed somewhere else. It does if you didn't get in somewhere, it wasn't meant to be, and that's really what you need to keep reminding yourself, whether you believe it or not. Saying it over and over again will help.
So, Livy, were you saying I didn't get that whole digital thing? Were you saying that you deserve to, you didn't get in somewhere because you didn't do that? I was trying to understand that.
I was just thinking, really taking a step back. I wasn't super interested in that school, so for me, getting rejected, like, I mean, yeah, it's disappointing to get rejected, but also I had to understand that I had like friends who were super invested in this school, like, and they like looking at, we have this like website Naviance where you can like see how many other people from your school applied, and it was just such a big number. And if I didn't like put in the work and the effort to like try and leave that digital footprint or like show interest by like liking all their social media, then like was I really that interested in the school in the first place? Like I don't think so.
What was that beep just now? Did we?
Oh, that was one of our friends who was a viewer saying that we were doing a good job. Sorry, that was
Oh,
my
that's
mom.
cool. Yeah, it's good to know all these things.
I
It's
got
a different world. Well, that's good. You are doing a good job. Colin, your friend who killed himself, was it related to colleges or application, or was it just that was a whole separate thing? Just
I
curious.
don't believe so. It was a little bit before we started really entering it, but it was right as school was starting to become really, really stressful in junior year. I think COVID definitely played a really big role in it as well. My buddy was a big football player, and at that point they had a season, but it wasn't. They didn't get the whole. They didn't get the. They didn't really get to enjoy the benefits of being on a team. It was very limited. It was very, very impersonal. So I don't. Again, it's not super related to colleges themselves, but I also know he was putting a lot of pressure on himself to keep straight A's for college. So
Yeah.
I
mean, we just saw in the Olympics. We see it with our sports athletes now. How has that affected you, losing a friend that way in terms of this college process? Have you been affected at all in terms of the whole watching the pressure? You saw your friend kill himself. What impact has that had on you in this whole college application thing and how you're viewing your future? Anything in particular you want to say about that?
Well, I think again, this is a bit more general, but I think since he's passed away, it's definitely made me more grateful for just like the little things in life, and I think that has kind of made me a little bit calmer about this whole college process. I'm seeing a lot of friends deal with extreme amounts of stress, social pressure, anxiety with colleges, and I guess just knowing him and like basically just it's more just like being happy to be alive and being happy about how it's I guess you could just say it's put things in perspective. Now, obviously, knowing what he's going through, me not getting into one of these schools doesn't seem like as big a deal at this point.
What do you all think about that, Ryan? What do you think about what Colin just said, huh?
Yeah, once you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, not getting into a certain school isn't the end of the world.
Yeah.
And even if you don't have any acceptances under your belt, it'll all average out in the end. It'll all work out. Something you'll find a path, right?
Yeah, what really matters, right? Like, what really matters?
Exactly.
Here's the question on the table: what really matters here? We watched these Olympians, the pressure of athletes. We're going to definitely do a show on that very soon. What matters? What is the perspective that we need to look at now as you go into this next stage of your life, and particularly with everything that you've all been through, and what we're all going through right now? Livy, you're smiling. Go ahead. You want to say something?
Oh, we had a friend who was making comments the other day who was like, "What is the meaning of life?" So that's why I was laughing.
What is the
But
meaning of life, Lily? Go ahead. Tell us.
actually, we were having a conversation about this in my English class. And we came to the conclusion that the meaning of life is it comes from like I think the last line of the text we were reading is like it comes from the hike instead of like the actual destination. Like
You mean
saying
you mean the journey? The journey?
yeah.
The hike is good too. The journey's the one we always hear, but the hike is the journey, is what you're saying, right? You
Yeah.
want to tell us more about the hike? Go
Actually,
ahead,
I have
Libby.
the paper with me
Go
right
ahead,
here.
Libby. Libby, tell us about the hike. What do you want to show us?
Um, I'm going to read a line here. It says, "The struggle itself towards the height is enough to fill a man's heart." So it's saying like the struggle alone, like just the like journey is that's where you like learn things. That's where you like gain experiences. That's where you're like doing things that make you happy. And even though it's a struggle, like you're doing something, you're filling your time with something. If you just easily like get like to point A, like to point B, there's no value in that. Like you're not doing anything with your time. You're not learning anything. Like it's all about like ups and downs. But if it's just like a flat line, then I mean, there's no meaning to
So it's
that.
important to have the ups and downs and face the failures and the imperfections and as Colin was saying after losing his friend, the perspective. Does anybody else want to talk about this subject about the meaning of life and just kind of what Livy's talking about? Ryan, you want to say something? And Mia, you're quiet, so why don't you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is also just like, even in the college experience and like just things in general, is really just taking every opportunity to learn from things, whether it's like good moments or bad moments. I think that by self-reflecting and really looking on how you can learn from even like the worst things is a great way to go about life. And like in terms of college applications, like rejections, there's like the little joke where it's like rejection is redirection, and it's like it's
I like
cheesy,
that.
but it's
Hey,
really true though.
Mia, I like that. Will you say that one again so everybody can hear that? Rejection is
Rejection is
go ahead.
redirection.
Okay.
So a lot of that, it's like it's difficult because I mean I was rejected from my top school, and it was my first school that I heard back from. So that was a very hard moment for me. But I also, within like I'm not kidding, like a day, if you just like take the time to like sit back and really look at the big picture, you're going to be okay at the end of the day. And I think by accepting it and learning from it, and also never taking it super personal and just moving on. It's hard to move on, but you can if you put the time in and you just let yourself kind of wind down. You'll be okay.
So how come you can be okay in the end? How come you can be okay? Tell us all how, and Ryan, all of you jump in. How come you can be okay? We're back to what matters, right? How come you can be okay? Ryan?
I mean, at the end of the day, I think we're all going to go to a school of some sort, right? And we can still get a great education there, although it's not the exact path that we had envisioned previously. Like, not everything in life is as you want it to be. And I think with the rejections, like, at first I was really upset when I was rejected from my first choice school, but then I thought about it, and you know what? I might be better off not paying $80,000 a year to go to school in Chicago, right? Like,
well, here's the other thing. We all grow, we all change. I went to Ohio University my freshman year. I was a terrible high school student. I think I had ADD. So, I understand, Leo. I totally related to you before when you were talking about the SATs. Man, I didn't want anybody to know my SAT scores, believe me. And I keep projecting, God, I wish I had been around when SATs didn't matter. But I mean, what people need to know is that I was a terrible student. I went to Ohio University. That was the year of Kent State and Vietnam. So I was kind of glad because we all ended up, we never even finished our freshman year in the United States. But no one even fit. Colleges closed down. But, you can transfer too. I found myself as a freshman in college. And so, I mean, do we have to be married to our choice? Because basically for me, I ended up at Buffalo with a school that I couldn't have had any chance of getting into when I came out of high school. But then I grew. and I transformed and got stimulated. Philosophy, the meaning of life got interesting to me. And so I think, what do you all think about that? Because I think we all think that, like, you make a decision, you got to go to this college, or this is it. It's a non-linear journey, right? I mean, you can maybe decide I've changed my whole life. Might even be for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or it might be because I sort of found a new interest in a new school, right? What do you think about that? Does that cross your minds as you're thinking about your journey? Anybody want to grab that?
I think for me at least, I know that all the schools that I apply to are very, very different. I have very large schools. I have very, very small schools. I have southern schools. I have northern schools. So I know that the schools that I have are
You got
very
another
different.
acknowledgement that your beep just went on. Did somebody else say
Now,
they
one
think
of
you're
my
doing a
friends
good?
asked if we have gov homework.
We do. We do have
What was that, Livy?
Sorry,
Oh,
just
all right.
ignore us.
But
All right, go ahead, Mia. Go ahead.
I think what's kept me a little bit more sane with this whole process is understanding that if I choose a school and I go to it, and within the first year, maybe I realize this is not the place I want to be, that I still have the opportunity to transfer, and it's not the end of the line. There are so many opportunities for me, so many other schools, and that even though it kind of feels set in stone, and it's also difficult because I feel like once you know where you're going, you're very excited and you want to see yourself there, but there's always room for change, and it's okay for things to change along the line.
That's a really important point. There's always room for change, right? As you say, we'll call it the hike. I always call it the journey, but I like the hike too. That's a good one.
That's what.
How about? Yeah, go ahead. You want to say something, Livy?
Oh no, I was just quoting my English homework again. But to add on to what Mia said about like if the place that like you had your heart set on, like if that's not where you end up, like for my sister, she was planning on like going in the South. She always said that like since middle school, she was like, I want to go to Georgia, I want to go to Georgia, I want to go to Georgia. And she got in there, like she had a roommate set up and everything. But then she got into Northeastern, and then everything shut down because of COVID. She's 2 years older than me, so she couldn't go visit any of those schools that were further away. But we were able to drive up to Northeastern, and she was able to walk around there. And it's interesting because the first time that we were there for my great grandma's 100th birthday, actually, in Boston. And we drove by the university, and my parents were like, oh, Grace, you want to like look around while we're here? And she said, no, I'm not getting out of the car. I'm tired. And then said, no, you should go look. It's a good school. And she said, no, I'm good. And then we drove away. And now she's there, and she loves it. Because when she ended up visiting, when like she couldn't visit the other ones, she got out and she was like, wow, I really like the campus. And then she got a feel for it, and like she's having the best time. She said she's so glad that it worked out that way. Yeah. Like I think she would have been happy, honestly, wherever she went.
But there's always a little serendipity in the magic of the journey, right? Sometimes you just end up somewhere and you say, wow, I didn't know, but look what else. The unexpected happens. All right, here's a good one. You're all leaving home. What's it feel like to leave home? I don't know if you have attachments. I'm sure you all do have attachments. What does it leave? And you're leaving home now. Coronavirus is up in the air. A war breaks out in Europe. I mean, you got friends. It's a whole change of life. What does it feel like in 2022 going to college? What is it going to be like leaving your psychological and physical home? What do you all feel about that?
Honestly, I'm partially I'm excited, but on the other half, I think I'm gonna miss home. I've grown up in Connecticut all my life, so I feel like I kind of want to see a change in scenery, maybe.
Okay, so that's what about the three of you? I'd like everybody to address this one. Jump in on this one, because every one of you, you're all leaving, so you have to have some feelings about leaving.
I'm gonna be going to a different country.
Colin, you want to try? I'm going to pressure you. I want you all to I answer this question. It's a good one for everybody to hear.
All right. I'm a pretty independent person, so I'm not as worried about myself as I am for some of my friends. But no, you're right. It will be definitely a challenge. Basically, just having to do life on your own. We've been with our parents, most of us, since day one, and that has not changed. So it'll be weird to, govern your own life. I think also definitely where you go plays a role in how much your parents still have influence over you. Obviously, if you leave the country, or if you fly, from the East Coast to the West Coast, the West Coast to the East Coast, or whatever, that'll definitely play a bigger role than if you go one state over or even staying in state. So, but it's a great question. I think that everyone has different levels of dealing with it. Some people cannot wait to get away from their parents. Some people are going to be crying for the first 6 months they're there. It's really
Livy.
just
Okay, well,
what you
Livy's gonna be brave now, and Colin, and use you as her cue card. Go ahead, Livy.
So I think I'm going to be someone, you said crying the first 6 months.
Yeah.
First thing I do every day when I get home from school is I sit down and I talk to my mom, and probably go get iced coffee some days if I don't have practice. Sometimes we go for runs. And when my sister went away for college, I had a really hard time with it at first because like she's my best friend. I do everything with her. But the beauty of technology is that there is a such thing as FaceTime, and I definitely
FaceTime is a good thing for you all, right?
Yeah,
Definitely.
it is. So I'm planning on just FaceTiming my mom, like, and I can FaceTime my sister still. So I think that'll be really good for me. So I don't think the transition will be like as bad as crying for the first 6
Well,
months.
let me tell you something, Livy. In my day, I had a girlfriend in high school. We went to separate colleges, and I had to go to phone booths to speak to her. That was a pain in the rear end. So
I bet.
I don't know. I haven't delved into your personal romantic lives, but having FaceTime is a plus, right? With people you're going to miss, right? So that helps the whole separation anxiety, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And Mia, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, like Colin said, I'm a pretty independent person. Like I've always been very self-driven, a little bit detached from my family at times, but I still think it's going to be a really difficult shift for me. You know, like I've never done sleepaway camp. Like I really think the longest I've been away from my mom and my brother has been like 3 days maybe. So the change is going to be, no, I've never really been away from home for that long. So that is definitely going to be something different, but I have faith that it's going to be okay. And like in terms of like siblings, my little brother and I, he's my little brother, so there's always been that bickering, but we're finally like on like good terms, and like it's like good, it's like finally like peaceful, but it's like now I'm leaving, so it's like I don't know how that's gonna work out. But I think what's really struck me recently is that I think the beginning half of senior year there was a lot of excitement about college, but now that we're at the second half, a lot of me and my friends are kind of sitting down and we're realizing that we're not gonna be with each other the next school year, which is really, I think that really hits because you kind of like grow up with these kids and now you all go your separate ways, which is really difficult.
So that segues me into my last two questions tonight is that, do you think about what kind of school you want to go to? Do you want to go to a school that has diversity of all different kinds of kids? Do you want to go to a school that just has one kind of one type of person? How much does diversity play in terms of where you want to go to school and what kind of kids you want to be around? Anybody want to take a crack at that question? They're all girls' schools. They're all guys' schools. There's a little bit this, a little bit that. Ryan?
I'd like to go to a school that is relatively diverse rather than just like homogeneous. I feel like you learn a lot more there and you get to look at everyone else's perspective rather than just seeing like one single perspective.
Anybody else want to? Livy, Colin, Mia?
Agree with that because I feel like my whole life I've grown up in Fairfield and like predominantly like white town, and I felt like I've always been like a little bit different than everyone else. I'd love to like live in a place where it's a little bit more diverse. Like I'd like to like experience that because I really like in my little like Fairfield bubble I've never experienced anything else.
So that's great to hear. How about you, Colin and Mia? You want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be awesome to get to meet people from all different kinds of backgrounds.
Yeah.
Really, just educate yourself on a whole bunch of different things and then just become a better person, a more well-rounded person because of it. And the best part is you'd be doing it pretty seamlessly. Like as you're just building relationships and building friendships that you would use to just survive college, you're learning about new people. And I think that's never bad.
That's a great message for everybody. And all right, here's the last question. You're going to have roommates that you've never met before. You're going to be with strangers in a dorm. I can tell you for me, it didn't work. I had a triple-decker bed with kids from Ohio. I could barely move in my dorm, and I ended up in an apartment with a jazz musician that was completely temperamental and made me crazy for a year.
Oh my
But
gosh.
basically, what's that? What do you have any feelings and anxiety around? Like, wow, well, not only are you going away, but you're going to be with strangers in a room, in a dorm room. Anybody have any feelings about that?
I mean, I feel like I'm like a pretty agreeable person, so like I have faith that whoever I end up with, I'll be able to get along with at the minimum. Hopefully, I hoping it's gonna be more than that. I know the roommate situation now. Like some schools make you go random the first year. Some give you the option where you can like find them beforehand and like maybe make a friend beforehand. I'm hoping that maybe I can meet someone beforehand with similar interests, so at least to have that kind of like baseline. But I also understand that like within like the first year you're going to meet so many people, and if you maybe don't necessarily love your roommate the first year, it doesn't mean the next year you won't have someone dorming with you maybe you like a little bit more.
Anybody else, Livy? Anybody else want to join in on this before we close down?
So my sister's
Or-
experience with her roommate, it was random and it didn't end up working out. I think her roommate like halfway through the year dropped out, like didn't tell her. So she had like the room to herself, which was awesome, but also like she didn't get that full like roommate experience. But she ended up saying that it really didn't matter because at the end of the day, like a lot of her friends, like I guess at the school that she went to, they had them fill out a form like saying like your lifestyle and all that stuff. And they put them with polar opposites because like opposites attract, which didn't work out too great for people. Like for like times that people went to bed. Her roommate got up at 6 every morning to go to the gym, and my sister was stumbling in at like 4 a.m. Like sometimes like she'd be getting up the time my sister would be going to bed. But they were both like polite to each other. Like they had no problem living with each other. Like it's really your roommate doesn't have to be your best friend. I think a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves for that. In reality, it's just someone that you're living with, who you're gonna cross paths with, but they don't have to be like your like soulmate.
Colin, Ryan, you have any quick thing you want to say about this particular last question? By the way, Fairfield Cares Youth, people are proud of you. They're proud of you, and we are too. And we're glad that you became more than a radio show tonight. But Ryan and Colin, you just want to jump in on the roommate thing or not?
Yeah, Ryan, you can go first.
All right, so I think with like the roommates, right, as you guys mentioned before, you don't have to be best friends with your roommate. For in all honesty, you kind of just have to put up with them, right? Because you're just living with them. And within like a year or two, normally you can just move out into an apartment of your own if you really can't stand them, or you can transfer if you really dislike them.
You just figure it out, right, Ryan? Colin?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's too much to say that hasn't been, excuse me, said before. But like Livy said, they don't have to be your best friend. You're going to meet people in other classes. You're going to meet people in potentially clubs, sports teams, activities, whatever you want to do, maybe people on your floor. You just have to be civil with them. And that's, it. Hopefully people will be able to figure that out.
And if Larry and Jane get into a school that you don't go into, you're going to be happy for them?
Yeah.
It's good to hear. Get the competition thing out, get the ego out, and let's try to be happy for people, right?
Yeah,
I agree with Colin. I feel like the less I hung out with my roommates, the better I got along with them as a roommate. So
that's interesting. So
yeah.
Absence made the heart grow fonder for you, Mike?
Well, yeah. Anytime someone was my friend, became a roommate, it never really worked. But the ones that a roommate is a different relationship than a friend. And I think if you think of it that way, you can probably have better success with it. So
let's end the show. This is a tradition on Kids Are Talking. Some of you know the tradition, some of you don't. We'll start with you, Colin. Just what do you want the people watching this show tonight to think about going to college, the application process? What do you want them to learn from tonight, and what advice would you give people in terms of as they embark later on or even now on what you're experiencing? You go first.
I think that the biggest thing that people should take away from this is it's okay if you're a little bit confused along the way. It's okay if you are not on a linear path where by this month you have this month you have this. Just the best advice that I could give, like I said, is be patient with yourself, ask for help if you need it. And I mean, this is a little bit easier said than done, but if the earlier you start, the better you're going to be. So just be patient with yourself, have fun with it, and enjoy the last year of high school.
Thanks, Colin. Livy?
I would say something that people should take away from this is that college is, it's your next 4 years. It's not like your friend's last 4 years. It's not mom's next 4 years. It's not dad's next 4 years. It's not like your guidance counselor's next 4 years. It's your next 4 years. So really, at the end of the day, no matter what pressure you're getting from like your parents, like people at school, you really need to put your opinions first and keep that in mind when you're making choices on where you want to apply and when you're finalizing it.
Trust your heart, right, Livy?
Yeah, exactly.
I got you. Okay, Mia, how about you?
I think with the whole college process and the application process as a whole, I think trusting that everything will work out the way it's supposed to is a really big thing, because you're going to get rejections, you're going to get deferrals, you'll get wait list. So there's going to be a lot of things that maybe you weren't hoping, but I think by embracing the change and knowing that it will all work out somehow, and also finding like a good group of people to support you through those ups and downs is like a really, really important thing to have.
The journey is the destination. The hike is the destination, right? And Ryan, how about you? What do you want to tell us?
The whole college process, it's important to realize that, again, as you guys mentioned, everything will work out, and that you guys should be proud of the work that you did for the past 3 years, because you've done a lot in order to even get to the spot. And even if it doesn't work out the way you wanted to, you still did. You still gave it a great effort, and you should be proud of yourselves for it.
And Mike, how about you, Mike?
Listen, I liked the concept of living for the hike. I think that's great. I liked the rejection is redirection. I think, don't take any rejection from any school too hard. If you have your heart set on something, that's okay, but definitely think of it on the as a glass half full type thing, and try to use that to make things for the better. And also, I'd like to say that I do know, like you were saying, Don, with your experience, and I had the same experience, 50% of students actually transfer after the first year. I think somewhere
That's
around
correct.
there.
That's correct.
So just go where you need to go, and if you need to transfer after that, then I think you can always find your way. Don't think of it as an eternal decision, and it'll be a lot less stressful that way.
On Kids Are Talking, as we always say, we're growing and learning, and the journey is not linear. It's non-linear. As you know, Colin, grief is non-linear. You went through it to losing your friend. It's a process. And all of you tonight, I'm so glad we got you back so people could see what the radio show really is. The radio show tonight became a live streaming show, so we combined 23 years ago with current Kids Are Talking radio and TV. And so we're so glad, and your organization, amazing. You're doing just great work with mental health. Mental health is a big part of our show. It's obvious that you're doing wonderful things, and I think all the colleges you want to get into ought to be watching you and being proud and saying you'd be an addition to any campus you walked on. And so thank you, all of you, Colin, Livy, Mia, Ryan, Mike. Thank
Dr.
God.
Don, thank you.
Thank God I'm not applying to college anymore, man. I'm an ADD, man. You're going to be fine with your ADD, aren't you? Yeah.
Thanks again to our sponsor, Pet Vet Care Centers, and we'll see you
next week. Mike, tell us about next week. Tell us about next week's show.
Oh, next week. What is next week's show? Next week, we're talking about the mental health in the mirror. So I think it's going to be a body image show. It's going to be talking about mental health, really strong about focus, self-confidence, self-esteem, and just
there's an addiction. Isn't there an addiction piece to that next week too?
I think there may be. Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to have our panel from last week joining us again, or from the week before, the last episode.
And just for you all to know, I want to do a show very soon on mental health and athletes and sports. We want to do all kinds of shows, climate change, siblings, more mental health shows. We'd love to have you back. Again, thank you from all of us. Our Kids Are Talking.
See you next week.
Let's just pray that we have a peaceful world. See you next week.
Yeah.